You're listening to Speaking Side Mount, the podcast where we talk all things side mount diving, from equipment, skills, techniques, and side mount diving expeditions to interviews with some of the world's top side mount divers. Whether you're new to side mount, been side mount diving for years, or just want to know more, this is the place for all things side mount. I'm your host, Steve Davis. Let's get wet.
Hey, welcome back to Speaking Side Mount. I'm Steve Davis. This episode is brought to you by our brilliant sponsor XDeep and by the patrons of Speaking Side Mount. Huge thanks to both for their support that makes everything you're about to listen to possible. Now, if you'd like to support the show, become a patron for as little as $5 per month and get early access to every episode plus heaps of other benefits. Pop over to www.patreon.com/speakingsidemount for all of the details. Well, there must be something in the water in Belgium. For such a small country located in Northern Europe, there seems to be so many divers there doing great things. To date, I've interviewed David DeBruyne in episode 48, Sanne Volja in 74, and Ellen Cuylaerts in episode 91. And for some time now, I've been following the exploits of Florian Symoens. Florian's an ISE Tech and Cave instructor who for many years juggled his diving passion with his hospitality business. Surprisingly, during COVID, while his nightlife business was in lockdown, Florian's diving activities boomed, with more courses and the time to take up exploration of the mines in Belgium with Sanne. As the world opened up, so did the possibility that Florian could transition from his nightlife business to become a full-time technical diving instructor. Now, as Florian and I discussed, there are so many of us who juggled our careers in diving, so it was outstanding to hear his story and his plans for the future. In this episode, Florian and I discuss his diving background, the Inner Space Explorers or ISE agency. We talk about ISE's take on side mount diving, and we get into how Florian became a cave instructor, and given much of the diving in Belgium is mines, we contrast cave, wreck, and mine diving, covering the similarities and also the differences that we need to be aware of. Florian takes us through the sale of his business and his progression to a full-time tech instructor, and we talk mine exploration in Belgium and the tools required, including the KISS Sidewinder rebreather, on which Florian is now an instructor. Now, Florian has experience on a bunch of rebreathers, so we compare and contrast a few, in particular the DiveSoft Liberty, before we share our excitement on the upcoming release of the second generation KISS Sidewinder or Sidewinder 2.0. We close on Florian's plans for this year and beyond. All this and much, much more on this episode of Speaking Side Mount.
And we are recording. Florian, welcome to Speaking Side Mount.
Thank you, Steve.
Mate, it's awesome to meet you. Thanks so much for sharing your time with us. I know you've been super busy over the last few months, but let's kick off by having you tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. It's a great honor to be here on Speaking Side Mount. It's unbelievable for me. I'm quite humble. First of all, sorry for everyone. My English is not quite good. I'm a dyslexic person, so finding motivation to learn English was coming through diving, but it's not my main language to speak in. So I'm Florian, based in Belgium, and I'm a dive fanatic like everyone here on the show, I think. And I'm quite motivated to share some information regarding diving and my life, because this is 2024 is the first year for me that I'm full-time teaching. Special times for me ahead.
Yeah, exciting year for you. And I know you've been teaching for quite some time now, though. So let's go right back to the very beginning. When did you get started in diving and how did that come about?
I got my first certification as a birthday present in, I think, 2005. So I think for my 15th birthday or something like that, together with my brother and sister, we did a PADI open water course. So there it all started. But the first 10 years were quite difficult because I was doing a lot of sports and there was not immediately a hookup with a lot of buddies of the same age doing that. So I think the first 10 years was not much activation or activity in the diving area. And then I think 10 years later, something like that, I don't know exactly, a trip to Mexico changed all of that. So yeah.
Man, if I had $1 for every time I'd heard that before, I went to Mexico and then look what happened.
Yeah, and then then things went downhill from that, and still. Yeah.
Brilliant. And so you went to Mexico. I'm assuming, did you ocean dive or did you dive in the cenotes, or what did you do there?
So I was already partly open water, and my girlfriend in the time, I told her like, hey, do your open water, and for me it will be kind of a refresh, because hey, Mexico, cool diving destination. But I was really focused on ocean diving at the time. No caves at all. I remember even the club here in Belgium was like telling us to go to cenotes divings, and I was the one saying like, no. Cave diving with the ceiling above my head, never. And most of the time, my girlfriend at the time that convinced me, and then the dive center as well. They were really good sellers. They convinced me like, hey, cenotes are big, huge, light. Just go check it out. Yeah. And then, it was like, mouth to the floor. Yeah. And my dive guide in the time dove side mount. So it was the first connection with side mount as well. So I saw like, bottles on the sides, horizontal trim. Like, what is this? And that combination, when I came back from that trip, everything changed. So then I looked up how I could dive in that way. So I found a way to enter Space Explorers and a good instructor.
Yes. Yeah, once you see side mount diving, I remember myself, it was not so long before the time you're talking about, probably 4 or 5 years beforehand. The same thing, I saw the Steve Bogart's video remotely on the internet in Ponderosa in Mexico, and just thought, oh my God, I want to dive like that. And then, of course, you've got to kind of seek out an instructor that can teach you that. And one thing I've learned through speaking side mount is there's such a rich community in Belgium, which if you think about Belgium, it sounds a little bit surprising, doesn't it? And yet you're, I think, the 3rd or 4th guest I've had on Speaking Side Mount from Belgium. So Belgium is overly represented per capita in terms of great side mount and cave divers. So tell us a bit about, you went back to Belgium and you found in the Space Explorers. I do want to talk to you about them as well. How did that process go in terms of doing your side mount training and progressing with ISE?
I started to look into training for side mount, and I came in contact with Tom Seutens, that was active trainer in ISE in the time, and he told me like, no, don't go immediately into side mount. You should first do a buoy rec. It's a kind of class that focuses on buoyancy, trim, fin techniques, the basics. So I did that, and therefore I think side mount was like put aside for quite a long time, because the passion and the focus on just training and go in the water to get more skills, that was really for me the thing, because I was studying like sports and at the university. So for me, training and was the fun part of it. So side mount was like put in a box aside, and then the back mount was kind of cool for a long time. I think my first 500 dives was no side mount anymore. Yeah. So just because that way of training and focusing on how to get better was for me, the thing. Yeah. And then the doubles and dry shoot, and you grow. Well, yeah. There was no need for side mount at that time, because I was like, I fell in love with training, and the doubles and back mount that did it for a long time. And I think it was because of cave diving and then in the lots and some entrances and some caves like Marchepied. Because of those caves, side mount was back out of the box, and then training into the side mounting, and so step by step, side mount was back on the agenda.
Yeah, brilliant. I actually know Tom. I met Tom at Gozo Technical when I was there. It must have been 2015 the first time, when Tom Steiner was also an ISE instructor, and great guy and very, very good diver. And so I'm pretty sure, I don't think we buddied, but I'm pretty sure we were on the same dives a few times there in Gozo. So brilliant. And I think there is an interesting point there too, because for a lot of the listeners, I don't know if ISE is an agency that many are very familiar with, but very similar in focus to GUE in terms of DIR focus. And so therefore starting with back mount makes a lot of sense when you're doing that. And of course the GWE fundies, or ISE BOE, I think it is. And a great way to start yourself out, because I talk a lot in side mount about having a platform. And I think those sort of courses give you that platform that you can then transfer into other types of diving, be it side mount, rebreather, and so on. And so having a great foundation or platform is certainly a great way to start in diving. How did you find the transition? I'm assuming it was relatively easy for you to go to side mount, having built that foundation with BOE training.
Yeah, the training or to get into side mount was just because we did some caves where the entrance was too narrow. But even after that trip, I didn't have enough money to buy my first side mount harness at the time. So after that trip, side mount was back put in a box. Yeah.
Yes.
But regarding to switch from systems, it went very smoothly because I had 500 dives with the back mount. So I think switching between setups, it's a good thing, but some people switch too fast and too early in their training moments, and then can be a little bit chaotic. But for me, I think it was the right time. And especially a little bit later, when I started with Sanne doing some exploration times in the COVID lockdown, then there was even a bigger need for the side mount, and the side mount was very fast back out of the box. Because with doing some mines and exploration mines here in Belgium, the back mount was way too heavy and was a pain in the ass. So again, having my first real X-Deep harness, from that on, I think every fun dive I ever made was in side mounts. So right now it's my favorite setup, especially with the Sidewinder, the KISS. But I still teach back mount, but it's my specialty anymore. But I'm still quite handy with the back mount as well, so I can help out starters for sure. But hopefully soon I have another instructor next to me here in Belgium. That's the plan, and he is really focused on back mount, so I can give more of the back mount stuff to him, and step by step.
Yeah, nice to collaborate that way. And I mean, a lot of people think, perhaps personally with me, that I'm kind of anti-back mount, and I'm not. I think it definitely has its places, and certainly we've talked before about ocean diving and serious weather, for instance, or where there's currents and so on, and where there isn't a requirement for either managing your equipment individually. So you talked about the weight and carrying it around out of the water, which is a problem. So if you've got distance to go or anything like that, side mount can be massive advantages. I remember when I did my full cave in Cave del Agua in Spain, I don't know if you've dived there, but it's terrifying, the slope that you have to go down to get into the cave entrance there. And it's true. The explorers have set themselves up with a nice pulley system where they can flying fox their equipment down, but if you've got to carry it down, it's a huge problem. So access is one thing, and then of course if you've got narrow passages or narrow entrances and so on, side mount will show its benefits from that. A couple of things to ask you there. I was aware obviously of ISE from my time in Europe with people like Tom, very aware of Achim Schoffel and what a great diver he is, and setting up the agency and so on. One thing that was apparent early on, and I don't know if that's changed, was that toddy style side mount was the accepted method of diving side mount with ISE. And I've done an episode way back with Toddy himself. In fact, Toddy and I have done 3 episodes now. He's a great guy. I've got a lot of time for him. Very intelligent, fantastic diver and explorer. He has come up with his own system. And one of the things I talked to Toddy personally about was the way the toddy style system worked, the fact that you needed to use aluminium or aluminum cylinders for that to work, the 2 1-meter hoses so you could donate what you breathe, all of those things that are differences from, if you like, Mexico style or even Florida style side mount. So I'm a little bit curious around that in terms of the way that ISE is diving side mount now, because I do see many divers using X-Deep now, for instance, and diving more Mexico style. So how has that progressed over the years, and is it still a toddy style thing, or are you now able to teach other methodologies within side mount?
Yeah, a really good question. Just today, I talked about it with the Vice President, Ellen Cuylaerts. So normally, we still teach in ISE only the side mount 2 short hose way, the 1 meter way. That was the way I was learned in the early, my early side mount starts. But step by step, I found out for myself, it's a special story. regarding going on a trip with Patrick Widman after some Sidewinder training to Poland. Mm-hmm. And he lost all his luggage, even the Sidewinder, and it was for a shoot. So I had to give him my Sidewinder, my dry suit, everything. And I had to switch to open circuit. But I was the light holder, so I was just swimming behind his butt with a big light. And because of coincidence, I got other equipment than normal. So a long hose and a bungee backup thing like I was used in the back mount setup. And I did a lot of one-hand switching in that dive, and something felt easier. So I started training with a long hose on my own, and then talking with some other people here in Belgium to get some tricks and tips to get it really fine-tuned. I'm a big fanboy of ISE, and 95% of the things we do I really like. But regarding the side mount, I started doubting. And as an instructor, I cannot lie. If students ask me what my experience is, what my feelings are, I started to dive the long hose because for the simplicity and exploration, one-hand way, muscle memory, I found the switching between regulators and stuff with the toddy, or not the really toddy system, but the ISE system, it's maybe 90% the same, but I don't know, because I was never taught by toddy, so I will not say that I 100% know that system. But the way we did it with the ISE, I found it quite difficult, and I was like, why doing something difficult if it can be easier? Yeah, and we train for the end goal in mind, exploration diving, and donating what you're breathing, like NOC. That's not a real exploration ID. I mean, that's for who? That one bottle, not redundant, single first open water diver that is not trained well, that he doesn't look at his SPG. Yeah. So yeah, and right now, like today, I was talking about it, like because if a sideman diver comes to us and he is already trained in long hose and he wants to do a BOE class, that's possible. But if someone who is already in ISE wants to do side mount, then it's the 2 1 meter hoses. So I think right now we start to have an open discussion, but it's always the same with agencies and people that were protecting something, and politics and ego and whatever. So progression, that means sometimes to change some stuff. Yeah, it's not always easy to do that, especially if you throughout history protect something. I don't think it was an easy thing to protect. And I see advantages in both systems. So if people ask me, like, it's a pro and con story. I think a lot of things work. I think in a team, when you have a procedure, it works. What I really like with ISE is it's a really small agency. It is DIR oriented, what I really like. But I think they are really open-minded for the new stuff on the market as well. So progression and changing. Everyone is really open-minded in the board of directors, so hopefully they are going to be even more open-minded regarding side mount options in the future. Would be really cool.
That's a great discussion, and I hope I'm not dropping you in it, as we say, in terms of having this conversation, because it's always difficult when you've got a little bit of, if you like, disparity in the way that you think about things. When I was doing the Toddy episode, and I did try to do an episode with Akim as well, and it didn't come off. No disrespect to him in that either. It was just we could never get our calendars together, and perhaps I should go and try and do that sometime again. I had seen a lot of the online discussion around it, and obviously way back I've interviewed Steve Bogarts as well about some of the beginnings of Mexico-style side mount, i.e. where did the long hose come from? Yeah, he and others in the same era there were starting to think, well, look, we've got mixed teams here. We're getting people who are coming from back mount DIR type training, and so they're very used to having a short hose on a necklace and a long hose. And so therefore, if he could configure side mount in a similar way to the way that they had been diving, the progression to get them into side mount, and they were in those days going not just to side mount, but to side mount cave diving straight away. He thought that would be easier. And I don't think there was a lot of consideration around the donate what you breathe, primarily because donating from your right D-ring is so easy, especially if it's got a breakaway bolt snap on there. So, I mean, there's no drama in terms of breaking it away from a right D-ring and donating it versus pulling it from your mouth. It's almost the same movement. And then also the other thing is, the great thing about side mount is, both regulators have been used in the very recent past. So i.e. 10, 20 bar or so, you should be switching. So both of them are working. And that's not necessarily the case if you're diving back mount, where the necklace is not in use for most of the dives. So I felt a lot of advantages to the long hose. And you mentioned another one that I hadn't even considered, which is one-handed switching when your other hand is occupied. So lots of advantages. When I spoke to Toddy, he was able to communicate many of the advantages of 2 1-meter hoses. You can donate both sides. You can also donate a cylinder because you're diving aluminium. Of course, if you're diving steels, as I often do here in saltwater in New Zealand, I won't say it's impossible, but it's not preferable and could cause problems. So you would not go down that path. Yeah, lots of advantages and disadvantages. And I try not to shoot down one particular way. I'll have my own preference. You have yours. It's really a matter of learning what the advantages are of each one and then making a decision as to what suits you.
Yeah, I try to be as open-minded as possible, but regarding muscle memory as well. Why I think one-handed skills are really important is maybe because I'm a cave instructor and cave-oriented. But I try even with recreational divers level 1, like or open water equivalent, I start as early as possible to do one-hand skills and try to learn them a way of doing things that should never change in their future. Like the way you put away your primary light, it should be always exactly the same, because then you can get muscle memory, reflexes, and hopefully when shit hits the fan in the future, you have a fast solution. So regarding that as well, for me, the side mount long hose bungee, it feels so natural. So the moment you start to switch between setups, I really try to keep everything as similar as possible. Like my first rebreather was the classic Kiss. The rebreather I love now the most is the Sidewinder, but even on my classic Kiss, I have a dual muff, and the way I dive it, it's almost the same. I position my dual muff on my classic exactly at the same place on my chest, because I almost don't feel the difference. And then you have the muscle memory again in place, and I think that's something really, really, really important. Yeah, regarding that as well, the long hose makes sense. But yeah, pros and cons. Awesome. It is really something. Yeah.
Yeah, great discussion, and thank you for sharing on that. Now, we were talking about your progression, and we got from back mount to side mount. How did cave diving then come into your training and what you do?
Well, in the ISE population here in Belgium, and maybe the technical diving industry in Belgium, cave diving is quite popular, because for us it's quite hard to get experience in deep diving. Yeah, the ocean, the North Sea, is not an easy place to plan and do a lot of dives, and it's not so deep. It can be deep, but not from shore off like in Egypt or so. Growing into mines or caves is something quite natural here, because if you want to go into technical diving, it's easier to go to the Lot or the mines in Germany, or in our southern part of Belgium. It is full of mining history, so the overhead thing is, for me, it was an easier step to grow experience in overhead than in normoxic or hypoxic. It started with seeing some cenotes in Mexico, and then 2 years later, a cavern course in Belgium, in some mines, and then my cave one in France, in the Lot. And right now I try to return in the Lot minimum once in a year. Most of the time I'm there for a couple of weeks, and then it's like cave camp. So Lot is amazing. Not only for cave diving, but for food as well.
Mate, I just have to get there sometime, because I've seen so much from people like yourself and others in Europe diving there, and I've heard a lot about it. One of the things that scares me a little bit is cold water, of course, because most of the caves I go to Australia. In fact, we're planning our next trip there in April, and it's a little cool there. It's kind of 15 Celsius or so, but I don't tend to dive very much colder than that, maybe 14 occasionally in the winter here, but that's about as cold as we go. So
the Lot is for 14.
Is that the temperature?
So, yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize. Oh, okay. Well, all my excuses are gone now.
Perfect training for dry gloves or heating or I don't know.
And so most of the cave diving that you're doing now is in France. You talked a bit about mine diving, and I've spoken to many of my guests about the differences between caves and mines. How do you see the two? How do you contrast cave diving and mine diving? Are they exactly the same, or are there subtle differences that we need to be aware of?
Yeah, they are not the same, but even caves are not the same. We have so much differences in caves. Like if you go to the France Lot region, it's all tubes. If you go to Cueva del Agua or Mexico, it's navigation is totally different. So regarding overhead training, it's a discussion like what kind of caves you have, and then for sure mines is totally different. Pros and cons again, like some things are more dangerous in the one or the other. Then here and there's some human logic. Like in mines, you can, like if you get lost, you can think about like, hey, here there can be human logic, but maybe it's more unstable than a cave. But then the cave doesn't have any human logic. So between the caves itself, it's the same thing. Like if you combine or talk about the differences between Sardinia, France, Cueva del Agua, Mexico, and wrecks, we can bring in wrecks. Wrecks are maybe a little bit like mines, have the human logic behind it, the instability as well, and maybe even more instability. Because more currents, salt, sun, mines are quite stable, but then the dry area. So yeah, a lot of things to talk about in classes and with people, but it's a really cool thing. And on the other hand, it is overhead training or overhead diving. So for 80% of the things we do, I think it gets very similar as well. So talking about the differences, it's like 20%, I think. Overhead is overhead. Kind of the same focus, but then we have to talk about the differences in environment. But we can have caves with current as well. So it's always regarding the planning. Plan the dive the plan, and have someone around that can tell you about the differences and situational things that are different, and then get experience and use it.
Sure. Yeah, I've never done a mine dive, and I really want to do it. So I've got to figure out where I can go. I've been trying to find out if there's any mines here in New Zealand. We do have a very rich mining history. I just don't know if there's any flooded ones that you can actually access, and I'm not aware of anybody doing it. So it is something I want to have a look at. But then, of course, we've got Mikopasi opening up new mines in Thailand, which I desperately want to go and see. And of course, as you mentioned, the mines of southern Belgium and Germany and so on, and then the UK as well. Scott Argy, we did a really good episode on some of the things he's doing in Roscoby and some of the places in Scotland. That is cold water, though, so there's a downside to those ones.
Belgium is 8 degrees, so a little bit colder than France, but...
Do you dive dry gloves with those?
Yeah. Yeah, and even heating. Okay. So.
I thought I was soft.
No, I'm a pussy for cold, really.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. Now, you mentioned a little bit about how your life has transitioned at the beginning of this year, and you and I were talking last year about you selling a business. And one thing that's very pertinent to me as well is I juggle my businesses with my diving, and obviously diving is my passion. I also love my businesses, funnily enough. And one thing with having a business or a career alongside diving is there's the money side of that, because it is a challenge in diving to make a living. And many instructors struggle to a lesser or greater degree with the money side of this industry and how tough it can be, and how, it's a great passion, however, not very lucrative at times. And so running a business or having a career alongside diving can be awesome. But also I know in the back of many of our minds, if you said to us, hey, what would you really rather be doing? Most of us would say diving. And so you've been able to do both. You've had a business and a career. And so I'm interested in learning a bit about what you were doing and how you melded that with diving previous to this year. And also then talk about how you've transitioned in late 23 and into 24 to a full-time instructor.
Yeah, okay. That's maybe a long story.
It's fine with me.
So maybe we go even way back. So secondary school, I was already into sports, like sports and science. That was my thing. And if you ask then what my dream was becoming a sport teacher. So doing sports with people and training, that was always something really natural for me. I was a basketball coach and then a ski monitor. But at the university, my second year at the university, doing my sports education, I got in a ski accident. So quite a big one. I broke some parts in the back and so on. So sports career was done for, I think, 2-3 years. And at that time, I was DJing as a hobby. So the connection with nightlife was there. So when I stopped dreaming of becoming a sport teacher, because I was not able to do very simple physical activity anymore, then I started to feel really without any control about the future, because no degree, no passion. So the DJing and the nightlife was something I fell in love with and went to full on, like 200% doing that. And so I started talking with one of the owners of the pubs where I worked as DJ to buy it, to take over the club. So that was something I did for almost 10 years. So 10 years nightlife in Ghent, a university city. So totally black and white, like you cannot have something so hard to combine with technical diving. So yeah, it was a really, really, really hard combination to make. But on the other hand, I think it balanced my health really good, because I think 10 years of nightlife, a lot of my colleagues, with all respect of them, they look totally different than myself, maybe because of that lifestyle. So the diving was a kind of balancer, because I couldn't drink that much. I had to do proper sleep because my motivation was there. Like I really wanted to do some diving. So, and then COVID hits, and in COVID, my nightlife bar was closed for 2.5 years. And so, yeah, no work. So a lot of time. In that time, Sanne was tattooing, and her tattoo shop closed as well. So the both of us, that's when we started to do some exploration, because there was time. And what really was a positive part of the lockdowns was that people weren't able to travel anymore, but they had like money to invest. And the diving industry here, for me, really strange, because a lot of divers, instructors struggled from COVID, but for me it was a really boom here. So my own community boomed really hard from that lockdown. Yeah. So there the transition between the nightclub and the diving industry switched really hard. And after COVID, it was really hard to combine. So almost impossible. And for me, it was strange enough, I was back into teaching sports. So by accident, a really strange coincidence, there was a way back to teaching sports, like what I lost at the university. So for me, it was like a magical moment. I was like, yeah, I have to take this. But yeah, then getting to sell a bar, you need to find the proper buyer. And so it took a lot of extra years, a couple of years extra. Yes. And then, recently, I think 2 weeks from now, it's like finalized.
I looked at some of your social media and some of the pictures of your bar. It looked amazing. I thought, yeah, that's a place I'd love to go and have a look at. What was it called? Tam Tam, you say? Or?
Yeah, Tam Tam in Ghent, in the Overpoortstraat, yeah. That's a university city. People that come study, like Erasmus people, they will know.
Exactly. And I'm sure you had some great conversations with Patrick Woodman about DJing, and he's a big electronic music guy and used to be a promoter and so on.
Yeah, I still have to visit one of his events in Tulum, but I don't think he's doing it anymore.
No, that was a while ago, I think.
Yeah, too busy right now with everything regarding the Sidewinder 2.0.
Oh, that man does not have another microsecond in his day, as you're probably aware. I know when I was hanging with him late in 22, he was having meetings in the middle of the night trying to organize the KISS online training. And then during the day teaching me, and then, he's got a lot on his plate, and that hasn't changed, of course, with the work on the Sidewinder 2. So that's a very, very busy man, but exciting times, both for him and for Blackwater Group X Deep Seal. It's just such a cool thing that they're doing. And I do want to talk to you some more about that in a moment, but let's hang in this period that you're talking about now for a moment. you talked about COVID and how it changed the landscape for many of us. And I was in a similar boat, except that we weren't allowed to dive here for quite a while during that period. So it was kind of like weren't allowed out, not allowed to go diving. And the thinking behind it was if someone had a problem, they couldn't arrange a rescue. So it was those sort of things were stopping us. And also we couldn't work. So it was like a great holiday, but with no money. So not a cool time. Thankfully, our lockdowns didn't go on for too long, but it was still pretty difficult. But once we got back to diving, it was just so exciting. So I can only imagine what it was like. I've had Sanne on Speaking Sideman as well. She's amazing. So it must have been really cool to be able to get together with her and start to go out exploring during this period and have the time and the energy to be able to do that. Tell us a bit about what you two did together.
Sure. So Sanne is really good with the French language, and myself not so good, but together it was a good combination, because the southern part of Belgium, the archives and information regarding the mining history, it's most of the time in French. So we started to have some time, and we started to look into the history, and we started to go on hikes and go looking. But it was not easy for us, because we were quite two newbies, like two young people with no real big community around us that had some Explo history here. And in Belgium we have a lot of groups doing Explo, and a lot of politics going on. It's not an easy thing, and especially as two young new adventurous people, you're not immediately taken serious. So it was quite a solo start, but we had a lot of time, so we enjoyed it. So a lot of reading, a lot of research, and then going laterally on hikes, just looking for holes and then finding some with line in, and then eventually finding one with no line in, and then we still are exploring that one, or re-exploring, because you never know if it is already dived or not. But who cares? If you have fun and for you it feels like exploration, that's the only thing that matters. Yeah. So I think I'm very grateful for the lockdowns, because otherwise I don't know if I would ever have had the time to do all of that, because as you know, exploration is 80-90% not diving, so a lot of extra work involved that you have to like, otherwise you wouldn't do it. But you especially need the time for that, and that was given us by accident. But you can make the best of it, or you can suffer at home and cry. But walking was something, walking in nature you could do. So and that's 80-90% of the after research is going on a hike and going to search for the mine entrances, if you find it or not, if it's diveable or not, or something positive to look at that hard time as well.
Yeah, brilliant. And are you still progressing some of those exploration projects?
Right now I'm still exploring one of the mines we stumbled on in the COVID search. And right now, last time I dropped my reel around 90 meters in the mine. So for me, it's a deep dive place quite close to my home. So I'm like, hey, some hypoxic training around the corner. Well, 2-hour drives. I'm like, hey, cool. Yes. And it's still one of the mines that we found in that time. So quite cool.
So as you start to talk about hypoxic training and so on, obviously it sort of leads us pretty quickly into not only the training required for that, but also the tools required. And certainly with the price of helium these days, it almost immediately points us to rebreathers. So you mentioned that you started with the KISS Classic and you've now moved on to the Sidewinder. Tell us a bit about your journey with rebreather diving.
My first rebreather training was on the Classic KISS. I think that was the unit, the ISE unit, the unit Achim likes the most, I think, if I can guess. So MCCR was the way I knew it. I didn't know anything else. It was not a love on first sight at all. But step by step, I grew on it. But I didn't buy a Classic KISS because investing a lot of money and not being 100% sure. So I was waiting. I don't know on what, but was not convinced yet. So I rented the machine a couple of times to get my training. And then I went to Olivier in the Cave 2B to get trained with a Triton. And there I fell in love more because of the way I could use the Triton on my side mount diving. That was in the same time I started really to have my passion for the side mount thing again. And then I was like, yeah, I can use it on back mount, I can use it on side mount. So way more options, so a better investment. So I bought a second-hand Sump UK machine from Andrew Goring originally.
Yes. Andrew loves his chest mount rebreathers. Yeah.
Yeah, I still have it. It's a camouflage one, of course. And still MCCR, so easy peasy, same. Oh yeah, and then of course the Sidewinder. So I remember myself looking at some videos of the Madagascar project, and I was like, where is that rebreather? I don't see it. I see only the loop. And I was like amazed with the design and how sexy it looked. And I was like, yeah, okay, I need to get trained on that unit. So I contacted Widman, for some training. And then he came to the lot. It was close for me, the lot. And I bought my unit in the course. So when I did my mod 1, I told them like, okay, this unit sticks with me. And my first unit was one with a stamp of the Madagascar project. Really cool. I think that unit saw more of the world than I ever will see. But then I fell in love really hard, really fast, and was like, only diving Sidewinder. I was like, okay, if I want to become an instructor on a unit, this is the unit. So then I pushed with ISE because it was not a unit connected to ISE. So I started to do some internships after the minimum hours I had to do and so on. So it was a long journey to get the machine in ISE as well. And then the training standards and stuff. Yeah. And right now
congratulations.
I'm instructor on the Sidewinder and it's still my big love. But in the meanwhile, right now I did some extra training on the Revo, and I mean I do always crossovers, full courses, because I think that's the best way to get to know other units. And recently I did my crossover on the Liberty, and then the instructor of the Liberty, Chris Robrooks, did then the course on the Sidewinder with me. So we had a really cool workshop where the both of us learned a lot about the other units, because it's total different units. But again, a story about pros and cons, and it's side mount units. So we had a blast. It was a very, very fun times together. Yeah,
I have to make that happen sometime, because I'm very aware of the Liberty and how people who dive it love it. And obviously, I'm also aware of how different it is from the Sidewinder. And so I'm quite curious to have a dive on it and get a feel for what it brings. I had some very particular reasons why I didn't choose the Liberty for me. I first started talking about the Sidewinder, I think must have been 18. I think Michael Thomas in the Cave Diving Group was the first one to raise it with me. And then, of course, I spoke to Ed Sorensen and a bunch of other people at that time about different side-mounted rebreathers, including Richard Harris, who did a little bit of experience on a bunch of them. And in the end, went with the Sidewinder and trained with Ed and just loved it. So I think I probably got the same experience as you did as a side mount diver, where, except different, because I hadn't trained. That was my first rebreather, so I didn't have the benefit of having experienced another rebreather. So all I knew was side mount open circuit diving. But getting in the water and getting yourself into trim and then feeling that the unit was supporting you, not fighting you. And yes, I had to dive a rebreather, but it felt extremely comfortable. I've got video of me on like day 1 and day 2 diving in Jackson Blue, and seriously, I mean, I was quite proud of it. It looked like I'd been diving it for a while, and it was pretty much day 1, day 2. So I'd like to take some credit for that, but in truth, I think I'd found a unit that was supporting my diving as opposed to trying to fight me. So tell us a bit about your experience in terms of contrasting a side-mounted rebreather with what we call a side mount rebreather in terms of the Sidewinder. How would you contrast the two?
Well, if we start about KISS, keep it super simple, and the advantages of having a unit so simple designed like that are crazy. I mean, you can be literally at the end of the world. The only thing you have to really take care of are the only electrical parts on it. That's the shear water, the cable, and the cells. but all other parts are so simple, and if you have some failures, it's super simple to fix them with almost no training or no special tools. So regarding if you talk about this as a pro, I would immediately say Liberty is like totally different. Like it's electric all the way. I think engineering wise, really good. Like I think if you harness on eCCR, for sure, it's I think a really great option. But regarding simplicity and complexity, well, bam, you have already a big difference. But for sure, then they have redundancy here and there. I don't have a lot of hours on the Liberty, so I will be gentle regarding the pros and cons. I think if you really want to have a clue about the two units, you have to do the same hours on the both of them. Because a lot of instructors, they talk bad about a unit that they don't dive on. I'm not like that. Yeah? So I'm very careful because for sure I will be very positive about the Sidewinder because how many hours do I have on that unit? But pros and cons. I think even about the combination of the two machines. So for me, I am heading towards a level that I think like Bayload OC can be very fat around me, especially if I explore or put some line in some mines, narrow, visibility sensitive, and just having a Sidewinder like on me with on the left a deep Bayload sanity gas, and then on the right a rebreather that is fully redundant, and even maybe having on my Sidewinder a dill button as well on my butt. Like that's why I started to look more into the Liberty. Because I think those two can be a really great combination. So I don't have any experience in payload or backup rebreather, but I think that's what I'm going to step into in the nearby future, and that's why I looked at that machine, because it can be a really cool combination. Patrick was telling me, put two Sidewinders on top of each other, but I don't see it right now. Maybe with when we have the final 2.0 version, they have something for that. I'm really looking forward for that one. But right now I'm looking like, how can I combine two rebreathers and stay as flat? So that's why, I think combinations can be really cool as well. And still having an 80 of deep gas that you can switch to the backup regulator. In my head, it's something I think like, it's really cool as well. Because having two rebreathers and no deep gas, I don't know. I know people are doing that, but I'm not even ready for that idea. So
No, I'm with you. And recently I had a little bit of a CO2 issue, not a big one, but a small one. And being able to bail out onto a very high performance open circuit regulator just instantly solved the problem. It was quite remarkable how I was just working a little bit hard at not a great depth, at probably 35 meters, trying to set up some camera shots and stuff. And just overbreathed, just a real quick bailout. As we say, the timeout, as Patrick calls it now, with amazing. It just almost instantly evaporated. Quite amazing. And then I was able to go back on the loop because it wasn't an issue with the unit itself. It was more the way that I was breathing. You're already a Sidewinder instructor now. So how was that transition and progression for you? A bunch of people asking me if I'm going to become a Sidewinder instructor. I would love to. I simply do not have the time, not only in my day, my week or my month, but also I need to build the market here in New Zealand. I think I'm one of one or one of two or three Sidewinders in the whole country, and there's not that many in this part of the world at all. There's a few in Australia now, and I'm sure that will grow as the Sidewinder 2 comes out, but probably not in my future, even though I'd love to do it. But tell us a bit about your experience in becoming a Sidewinder instructor.
Yeah, so I was already an instructor with ISE, even technical, so cave instructor. And the Sidewinder training was the first training I had to do outside ISE, because we had no instructor trainers on that unit. So for me, it was a really amazing time to do some internships around Europe, to meet a lot of different instructors, to see different ways of teaching. So I had a really cool ride. Yeah. And thanks a lot for Jacek and Patrick. Those two did an amazing job helping me out in that process. And I really like the way pro-tech style instructors are teaching the Sidewinder, and I think for an ISE instructor it was a really love connection, because we are really skilled oriented, and we always look for a way how to improve skills in diving. And the training on that unit specific, it is a lot of skills and a lot of getting to know the tools in the box, especially if you want to go in overhead training with it. So in your mod 1, you see a lot of fine tuning specific skills. And that's not typical for a normal mod 1 on a normal rebreather. It's a mod 1 of 7 days. Like a normal mod 1 is not 7 days, and not everyone understands why. But it's a machine. If you get to know the machine, not just driving it, but really into details, you have so much solutions, different solutions for different problems. And regarding overhead, that's very important. And to understand all those skills and solutions, it takes a little bit more time. But yeah, the way we train with that machine, I really, really, really like it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. When I did my Mod 2 course with Patrick, we kind of revisited a bunch of the Mod 1 stuff. And in a way, it was kind of my checkout dive, if you like. So we went to Ponderosa and basically spent a lot of time at 2 meters.
No fins?
No, with no fins, yeah. And and it was brilliant. And there's a really good example of something skill-based that is very uncommon is, how many rebreather courses expect you to be stable in trim at 2 meters depth, no fins on. And it takes a little bit of time, of course, to get yourself there. And I have to admit, I struggled, especially on day 1, because I had come from different water temperatures, salt water. I was diving the Sidewinder in salt water a lot. So I went to fresh water, much warmer than what I was in. So I had different undergarments. And so I wasn't particularly balanced in terms of the unit itself. It wasn't set up the way I would have liked it to on day 1. So it made for a very uncomfortable day with me. And I've sort of recounted previously, had a chat to Jake Bullman. Patrick wasn't very sympathetic, I'll say that, to me and my plight. And that's no disrespect to him, but I managed to corner Jake Bullman and ProTech and Player, and had 5 minutes just talking to him, and he gave me a couple of very good tips on getting myself sorted, and so things went much better on day 2, and I appreciate that skill now. I mean, I went on at the end of that, I did 12 days of training with Patrick, so I did Mod 2 and then Cave CCR with him. And at the end of that, when I dived some of the caves in Mexico, and as I'm sure you're aware, some of them are extraordinarily shallow. So diving Monkey Dust is a good example. The average depth in there is kind of 5 meters. Why would you use a rebreather for that dive? Well, there's lots of advantages of having a rebreather on a cave dive. You're in the overhead environment, you've got hours and hours. And I love some of the articles that have come out recently. I think there was one in the In-Depth magazine from Stratus Cass, who is also diving the Sidewinder, about why CCR is great for cave diving, irrespective of depth and other issues. And I experienced that in some of the dives I did after that, and certainly appreciated the skill building that I'd done for shallow water rebreather diving and being able to manage a rebreather. And at that depth, I had no issues whatsoever. It was super comfortable, loved it, absolutely loved it.
Yeah, regarding distance stress, gas stress, the Sidewinder can be, or a rebreather in caves can be really relaxing when something happens. You will not immediately think regarding fuck. Every exhale I do is losing time and gas. On the other hand, for sure, you need to calculate your bailout, because I see a lot of divers going then into overhead, and I make the count like bottle, and then I see the distance they do, and I'm like, you're getting too comfortable on the rebreather, and you don't know the bailout, and then that's a dangerous point as well. So we have to balance it. But for me personally, if I know my bailout distance, then it's really cool tool to have it. And regarding the training, I think it's so strange that still now a lot of rebreather instructors, they use like cards and say, look, you have an internal boom. And then the student have to look to the card. What? Internal boom. Okay. So now I have to close all my valves, looks to my SPGs, and one is dropping. And I'm like, what? That is no skill. Because an internal boom, you will get blown to the surface. So I really like the way I was taught by Patrick, that we we blow up the divers, as you know.
Yes.
And for me, what we do in ISE as well is inflated booms and regulators that are free-flowing and pulling some regulators out. Achim is quite famous for that critical skills, the way we train our technical divers. And for me, that was like, yeah, that's the way. You have to give the most realistic feeling to the diver, because even in training, they know there is an instructor, so it's never too real. Yeah, but
yes,
for me, that was like, yeah, that's the way. Yeah, we have to do it like this. Match made in heaven. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's a great unit, and I can't wait for the Sidewinder 2 to come out. I think the Sidewinder is a great unit, breathes really well. All of these things are true about it. Very simple. But just looking at some of the engineering and thought that has gone into the Sidewinder 2 in terms of the improvements, the new scrubbers, the new heads, I think it's going to be a game changer for Sidewinder diving. I'm still not 100% sure about the square shape, but I understand why it's square now as well. So,
did you see the design of the boat show? They made it a little bit different, the square design, and it looked a lot cooler. Yeah, because design-wise, I was like, yeah, it doesn't look as cool as the round ones, but we have to be fair. I think right now the weak points of the Sidewinder 1 are deep diving and cold water diving. We know there are people that's saying like you can do it, and I do it as well. But if it is for everyone, that's like, So I really, really look forward to the 2.0 second version, because they worked on those points.
Yes.
And I think in the start of May, I traveled to Cueva for a full cave course. And I planned some training with Jacek on the new machine. Yeah, regarding all instructors need to get trained on the second one, because probably
have they released yet what divers need to do? Do we need to do a course, or do we need to do training, or what's happening there? Do we know? I'll ask Patrick. I can ask Patrick.
I have to be very gentle. What I know, the instructors, all instructors that are fabric approved, so have to do a kind of crossover on the new machine.
Yes.
And then do some hours on it. So we will be the first to get the new machines, because they want to get all the instructors fast as ready as possible. And I think for the divers, it will be the same, like a couple of days, maybe just to have, there's one new skill. So that skill should be covered. And it's not officially known, but they will provide probably, I have to be very careful what I say here, but normally the Sidewinders 1 owners will have an opportunity to switch it to a second version, a newer version. The prices and details I cannot say, but they're really thinking to do that. So would be very cool, I think.
Yep. I know there might be some pushback about doing this, especially some of the old timers. But from my point of view, having gone through training with Ed and then done it again, effectively with Patrick, and when I say done it again, Patrick had come up with a new skills group at that point, which wasn't the same as what I did with Ed. And no disrespect to anybody there, it was just really the evolution again of the training. And so I really enjoyed that. And I think in terms of going to the 2, I would feel much more comfortable as a diver moving to the 2, coupling that with going and seeing an instructor and repeating skills and drills to make sure that I absolutely understand how that unit operates and what the differences are and how the new skills are working. There's a lot of value in that. So I certainly would, even if I didn't have to, I think I would go that way just as my personal preference for how I want to dive. Because at the end of the day, I mean, it's my life, my safety, etc., is coupled very intimately with diving that unit. And so I want to make sure that I understand it completely and can achieve the skills.
Totally understand. That's one of the reasons I always do a full crossover with a great instructor if I want to get to know another rebreather and not just take one and do a dive with it. Because as a rebreather diver, you probably can dive a lot of rebreathers, but to get the full knowledge and skills that make the difference, you need someone with experience on every unit. And regarding the second version, well, there will be a lot of new things. Probably it's cool to get that information from someone with a lot of experience.
Yeah, and for me, I have to travel for all of this, and that's part of the fun too. So,
yeah.
So maybe
I'm very travel friendly. I'm very travel friendly. So New Zealand, it's something I really want to visit as well. So who knows?
Oh, you must come. Actually, I just had Linda Claridge and Gary Buckley over from Australia, who are our cave instructors there for the people we're training. It was awesome to have them over and show them some of the dive sites that we have here. Saltwater diving, of course, but still really, really good. I want to close off with just talking a little bit about your plans this year, because we talked earlier about the transition to full-time instructing. So tell us a little bit about what 24 looks like for you and beyond.
Yeah, regarding dive training, for me, the weekends were already a couple of years like overbooked, because the community here, it's all people that work in the week. So weekends, that's not never was the issue. So for me, the scary part was getting enough training in the weeks, because Belgium is not the tropical destination where we have a lot of diving industry or diving tourism. But I am very happy that my agenda is quite full to the middle of summer, and getting a little bit international clients here and there. The Sidewinder brings me more and more away from Belgium. Because I told you, my idea is to be as travel friendly as possible. I don't want to have a shop. I work together with shops, but I want to be able to travel for teaching as well. I'm very happy with what is happening here, but for sure, we have to see if this is going to stay like that, because it's quite new.
I'm sure it will. Exciting times for you. And if someone wanted to reach out to you, how would they do that?
Through Instagram. I think my Instagram right now is a kind of a website. You can see what we are doing, the way we are training, exploring. Yep. So Instagram is a really good way to connect with me. Facebook. I still have to work on a website. So that's something on the agenda for 2024 as well. I would be very happy to help a passionate diver with training. So would be cool.
Brilliant. We'll make sure that we put up all of the links that we need. I'll grab those from you. I'll post them with all of the podcast promo. So, Florian, thanks so much. I've really enjoyed the discussion that we had. I think we covered some brilliant ground there, including open circuit side mount all the way through to your transition into cave diving and the history behind that, and a little bit around your business career and diving. I wish you all the best for 2024 with your, let's call it your new career. If I can possibly get to Belgium, I promised Sanne that I would try and have a dive with her sometime. So I need to make sure that I come to your part of the world and maybe meet in the lot or something like that. That sounds as if it would be amazing.
Yeah, keep me in the loop. I would love to host you and guide you around the mines here or friends' caves with pleasure. Would be really cool.
Thank you so much, and catch you soon.
Thank you, Steve.
Hey, thanks so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did making it. It was great to meet Florian and learn more about his diving in Belgium, about mine diving, about how he's transitioned his career from his business into full-time dive instruction. And then, of course, it's always great to talk about my favorite, the KISS Sidewinder, and our excitement about the Sidewinder 2 coming later this year. Thanks so much to X-Deep for their support. It really is instrumental in the production and delivery of this podcast. And also, thank you, to our patrons who support us every month for as little as $5 per month. Thanks again, and I'll catch you in the next episode. You've been listening to Speaking Sidemount from www.sidemountpros.com. If you like the podcast and would like to support the show, then why not become a patron of Speaking Sidemount? For as little as $5 per month, you can become a part of the Speaking Sidemount team, get exclusive early access to all of the episodes, and help us to deliver the very best sidemount, cave, and technical dive content available. Just go to www.patreon.com/speakingsidemount for all of the details. The address is also on our Facebook page, listed in the podcast notes. Thanks again, and we look forward to you joining us for our next episode of Speaking Sidemount.